Hello YouTube, it's your boy Dante with another graphics optimization guide. Today we are gonna be looking at the game ARKNIGHTS ENDFIELD. The purpose of this guide is to help you gain performance without sacrificing any noticeable visual quality. I will show you side-by-side comparisons of all graphics settings along with their performance costs, so you guys can set them according to your hardware. For this guide, I will be using an RTX 3060 Ti at 4K resolution and a frame rate limit of 120 FPS. This is the first time I am making a guide in actual 4K resolution, where both recording and the video itself is in 4K. Before this, all of my guides' video resolution was always 1080p, even if I tested on other resolutions. This way, you guys can clearly see difference in each settings. So I hope it was worth the effort for me and for all of my supportive viewers. Now with all of that out of the way, without further ado, let's do this. In graphics settings of this game, as usual, we get a few basic settings in start, which I will explain to you quickly in the end. So let us skip the top 3 settings along with VSync for now, and start with special effects quality. This setting controls the intensity of particles produced by various animations, like your character attacks or any kind of particle effects on the map like weather. At high setting, as expected, you can see the maximum amount of particles produced by your character's attacks. In comparison, in low setting, almost all the particles from your attacks are gone. In medium setting, we get particles produced, but not as much as high setting. Here is the comparison of all settings side by side in slow motion. Regarding map effects, you will rarely ever encounter something that is affected by this setting. I checked a lot of places with effects like fire and weather effects like snow, but this setting has no effect on them. In my 5-hour early session of this game, this was the only place I found which is affected by this setting. Performance-wise, like in most games, special effects don't cause any major performance loss. Here I would recommend high setting, but if you have an old system that lags during intensive fights like these, you can set it to medium to reduce the load on your system. Next we have shadows, which controls the resolution of shadows in the game. But in this game, the difference between all settings is very minimal. Looking at shadows of complex objects like these, in high setting we get good shadows as expected. Medium setting is barely any different from high. In low setting, the shadow resolution takes a tiny bit of hit, but this still looks almost identical to high and medium. In very low setting, the shadows have even lesser resolution, but they still look very good quality wise. Just for comparison, here is the difference between high and very low setting. Here is another example of complex shadows that look almost the same on both settings. Performance-wise, there was a 7 FPS difference between high and very low setting. Here I would recommend very low setting, as you will never notice the minuscule difference in shadows when you play a fast-paced game like this. Texture quality, like the name suggests, controls the resolution of textures in the game, but in this game it only controls the textures of characters. All the textures apart from characters are the same on all settings. Here is a comparison of high, medium and low setting. This setting, like in every game, only needs VRAM of your graphics card, and as long as you have enough VRAM, you will lose zero performance. So rather than showing FPS costs here, I will show you VRAM usage of this setting based on the native resolution, so you guys can set it according to your GPU VRAM. Next we have the most demanding setting in the game, Volumetric Fog, which adds fog and light rays from light sources to the game. High setting as expected gives you good light rays and fog. Medium almost has no difference compared to high. In low setting, we see that the light rays lost a bit of detail, but the fog is still the same. Offsetting of course disables this effect entirely. Performance wise, I had 82, 84, 88 and 93 FPS in high, medium, low and offsetting respectively. I would never recommend offsetting here, as honestly I think removing fog alone ruins the overall aesthetic and presentation of the game. Here I would recommend low setting, as fog looks the same compared to high and quality reduction in light rays is very minimal. Anisotropic sampling is another name for anisotropic filtering, which controls the textures of ground surface at distance when viewed from an angle like this. Here you can see the textures on this road when 8x is compared to 1x setting. Here is a comparison of 2x versus 4x. This setting, like in every game, does not cost any performance. Here I would recommend 8x setting for anything above a GPU like a GTX 1060. On a lower end system, you can set this to 4x and you should be good to go. Next is Ambient Occlusion. This setting adds depth to the scene by adding shadows to objects depending on the light's direction. Though in this game, the effect of this setting is extremely minimal. Most of the shadows are done by the developers using dark texture work on all objects of this game, as you can see here in the very low setting. Compare this to high and there is almost no difference at all. Still, I found some rare cases where there actually was some difference when you compare high and medium with low and very low. Here you can see that high and medium are the same, but low and very low lose a tiny bit of depth when we look at the shadows below these bags. When performance is compared, both high and medium performed the same. After that, with only a 2 FPS difference, low and very low also performed the same. Here I would recommend medium setting just to be on the safe side. Scene detail affects the model detail of a lot of objects in the map depending on distance. When compared high versus low, you can clearly see that the model of this round structure has lost polygons, and tons of other objects has also lost visual fidelity as well. When switching to medium, compared to high there is not much of a difference in near objects, while fast structures only get a slight reduction in quality. Performance wise, this is not a demanding setting at all, with barely any difference in all settings. Here I will recommend medium setting, as I found a few places in low setting that looked horrible in the distance, like these pipes here. Ambient Details should normally control the quality of ambient lighting in the game, but in the release version of this game, this setting seems to be broken right now. I tried multiple locations regarding this setting, and both high and low setting always gave the same results visually and performance wise. For now, leave this at low until the developers fix this setting in the future. Next is Vegetation Density, which controls the quantity of foliage in the game. At high setting, we get the max amount of grass everywhere. At low setting, we can see that only a few patches of grass are removed. Performance wise, I gained only 1 FPS in low setting, but I would still recommend it, as low does not fully ruins the experience, and people with low-end hardware could benefit more from this setting. Next is Chromatic Aberration, which is just a post-process effect that costs no performance. It only adds a blurred cinematic effect to the image. Since it blurs the game, I would recommend offsetting here, but there are some rare gamers out there that likes this effect, so this one I leave to your personal preference. Screen space reflections applies reflections to reflective surfaces like water or shiny reflective ground surfaces. In high setting, you get the best and sharpest reflections. In medium setting, reflections get a little blurry. Low looks almost the same as medium setting. Offsetting, as expected, disables reflections. Performance wise, I got 77, 80, 82 and 89 FPS on high, medium, low and offsetting respectively. Here I would recommend high setting if you have a good PC, but if you need performance, then use low setting as it looks identical to medium with a tiny FPS boost. Next is image enhancement, which is just another name for upscalers. Here you choose your image upscaler between DLSS and TAAU. If you choose DLSS, you get the option below to select the quality of your DLSS. Here are the actual percentage of resolutions from which these DLSS settings upscale the image to your native resolution. Here is the comparison of DLAA versus DLSS quality versus TAAU. Here DLAA has the best image followed by DLSS quality. After that, TAAU also has good image, but in lower resolutions, TAAU failed to construct complex objects at a distance, as you can see in this structure. Here the recommended setting is totally dependent on your hardware. If you have Nvidia GPU, first try to aim for DLAA, but if you cannot, then go to lower setting until you get stable frame rates. For AMD or Intel graphics card users, the only available choice here is TAAU. Below this, there is a frame generation option here as well, but this option is only available to users with an Nvidia 40 or 50 series graphics cards. So set this according to your needs if you are one of them. After this, there is a basic setting of sharpness, which costs no performance at all. So once again, set it to your desired liking. Then we have Nvidia Reflex, which is again not an actual graphics setting, but an Nvidia feature to reduce latency. So if you have lags in your game, I suggest setting this to on. Don't select on plus setting, as lots of users have complained that this only reduces very minor latency and sometimes makes the game stutter. The last setting, contact shadows, adds depth to the scene by applying shadows to small objects on the map like grass. Here is the on setting compared to off setting. Performance wise, I lost 2 FPS by turning this setting on. Here I will recommend on setting as it is not very performance heavy and has a noticeable visual difference. Now let us quickly see the setting we skipped in start before I compare the max setting of this game with my optimized setting. Graphics quality is just a preset selector which changes all the graphics at once depending on what you choose, like in most games. Resolution is self-explanatory, where you select your desired resolution. FPS is the frame rate limiter of this game, which gives you the option to limit the FPS to 30, 60 or 120. VSync is only used to reduce screen tearing, so if you don't have a G-Sync or FreeSync display, you can set this to on to remove screen tearing. Now let us compare the max setting of this game with our optimized settings. As you can see, there is almost no visual loss in graphics fidelity, and we went from 81 FPS to 98 FPS, which is a total of 17 FPS boost on a graphics card that can easily run the game in 4K. So if you have anything less than an RTX 3060 Ti or you are playing at a low resolution, the difference of FPS for you could be even bigger. And this brings us to the end of the guide. If this video was helpful to you, kindly like and support the channel by subscribing. Good luck and happy gaming!